the whole way because I'm cycling. So I might keep you on audio instead.
Oh my god.
I'm just out of work.
Malcolm, where are you headed?
I'm just going home from work.
That's commitment.
Frankie, did you? Oh, Andrea, did you do your hair and makeup as well for this?
Yeah, I did. I'm very
Oh,
impressed.
that's amazing.
And fancy shoes. Oh, like the whole thing. Wait.
Are you able to show us your shoes?
Yeah, I did. And Gordon got distracted, but yeah, I can show them.
I didn't see them. I'm sorry. Show us again
let's see.
because.
I want to play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Oh wow.
Nice.
Oh my god. That's a really nice dress.
Say something so I can see you.
Hi.
Amazing.
Hey. Okay. No, I'm still not. Oh no. Now I am. Here.
Very nice.
Okay. Once again, the shoes.
Now I'm dressed up.
Y'all look great. Y'all look
Frankie, you should show off as well. Show us off, please. Show
Yeah.
off, please.
I can only show you to the waist down because I've got trackies on the bottom part.
Slacker.
I really like the waistcoat with the short hair. Got really nice 80s, 90s vibe.
What's that? Who was
I like
that?
the waistcoat with the short hair a lot.
Thank you. The waistcoat's from Ben, actually. Thanks for the waistcoat.
You're
Ooh,
welcome.
it's a modern
It looks really
take
good on
on
you.
Flatterer.
I haven't even started yet.
Has everyone got their sweet treats?
I've got boozy hot chocolate.
Yes.
I also have boozy hot chocolate.
My hot chocolate hot pot's just coming out. It's not quite ready yet.
I forgot to get
Taking a little bit longer than I was expecting.
Got a yummy one.
So when we get started, there's the first chapter.
Ooh, Gordon.
The first chapter is like 3 pages long, and it's Neville, what's that?
Chocolate cake and various ice creams.
Amazing.
I love that Gordon has his walnut whip.
Show us your walnut whip, Gordon.
It sounds so kinky.
That's not bold.
Speak up, Gordon.
Oh, I can't make the whoosh sound because the whip doesn't work very well.
Okay, I think my hot pots are ready now.
Right, we're nearly ready.
You ready?
Charlotte, where are the flowers from?
They were reduced to £3 in Waitrose from 20.
Wow. Well done.
Thank you. Finally, the flowers are on sale in this apocalypse. I've been waiting for weeks.
I'm concerned that my chocolate hot pots are too hot to hold.
Oh no!
Look at them though. Oh my god.
Look amazing. Well, Ben.
A concern of many people here that they're too hot.
Oh my god. These are absolutely delicious.
Okay, stop! Don't eat it yet. Don't eat it yet. We've got one chapter which is 3 pages long of Renaud being, characteristic, and then the party starts. So,
and that's when
are we not allowed to have nice things until the party starts? Is that what you just said?
I'm not the boss of you, Bina. You can have nice things whenever you want them.
However,
if you have it, and then you don't have it anymore, and then the party starts, and the descriptions of the food at the party, you'll be sad if you don't have anything to eat.
So is the idea just to have backup food for the food you're about to eat?
Yeah.
That's fair. This is hot chocolate. For when that runs out, I have some excellent tea. So
Yeah.
I do have 4 chocolate hot pots, and I don't have anyone here to share them with.
Definitely just eat them all.
it's definitely a problem. If only someone had come down and visited, then I could have shared them. But you know, quarantine.
4 chocolate hot pots all to yourself? My heart bleeds. It really does.
Life is hard.
Well, I'm gonna go through it, and then I'm gonna have my chocolate treat after. So I will disappear off after we finish briefly and go and grab my chocolate mousse.
We don't get to watch you eat it.
Oh no, I'm gonna come back and eat it on camera. But,
Okay.
it's just
Really
not here.
what we're here for.
I have fetched mine and Nick's entirely disproportionately large chocolate stash.
I love your chocolate.
Oh,
Wow.
I'm also about to pour myself a bit of whiskey, which I won at a Kaylee that I was at.
Ooh, whiskey. Oh, I'm gonna have a drink as well.
I think, yes, I'm going to go for one as well.
Oh my god!
I got the chocolate.
I'm excited for this party.
My whiskey was bought at a super lovely whiskey shop that we went to like during a blues event with lots of cuddly humans.
We drank that yesterday.
Nice.
We might have some more just now.
Definitely should.
Oh my god, this is a really nice whiskey.
You're just a tease.
Time to start.
Right. How are we doing for time?
I think it's story time.
I might offer a chocolate hot pot to my housemates actually. Tom, do you want a hot chocolate
I'm
hot
just going to
pot?
mute Ben.
Would you like a chocolate thing?
Yeah.
That wasn't considered beforehand. I have no one here to share with.
Oh no.
Story time?
Story time.
Story time. Cheers.
Now, are you all ready? Have you stopped faffing around with your various nonsense?
Kind of.
Right. So, Chocolat, the last part. Are you all sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Chapter 35. Friday, March 28th. Good Friday. I should be with my flock, Père. I know it. The church is thick with incense, funereal with purple and black. Not a single piece of silver, a single wreath of flowers. I should be there. Today is my greatest day, Père. The solemnity, the piety, the organ ringing like a giant underwater bell. The bells themselves silent, of course, in mourning for the crucified Christ. Myself in black and purple, my voice the middle note of the organ intoning the words. They watch me with wide, dark eyes. Even the renegades are here today, black-clad and hair greased. Their need, their expectation fills the hollow in me. For the briefest moment, I feel real love, love for their sins, for their ultimate redemption, for their petty concerns, their insignificance. I know you understand, for you were their father too. In a very real sense, you died for them as much as did our Lord, to protect them from your sins and from their own. They never knew, did they, Père? Never found out from me. But when I found you with my mother in the chancery, a massive stroke, the doctor said. The shock must have been too great. You retreated, went away into yourself, though I know you can hear me, know that you can see better than you ever did before. And I know that one day you will come back to us. I have fasted and prayed, Père. I have humbled myself. And yet I feel unworthy. There is still one thing I have not done. After the service, a child, Mathilde Arnaud, came up to me. Putting her hand in mine, she whispered, smiling, "Will they bring chocolates for you too, Monsieur le Curé?" "Will who bring chocolates?" I asked, puzzled. Impatiently, "But the bells, of course." She gave a chuckle. "The flying bells." "Oh, the bells, of course." I was taken aback and for a moment did not know how to answer. She tugged at my soutane, insisting, "You know, the bells, flying to Rome to see the Pope and bringing back chocolates." It has become an obsession. A one-word refrain, a whispered shouted chorus to every thought. I could not prevent my voice from rising in anger, crumpling her eager face into dismay and terror. I roared, "Why can no one here think of anything but chocolates?" And the child ran wailing across the square, the little shop with its gift-wrapping window grinning at me in triumph as I called after her too late. Tonight there will be the ceremonial burial of the host in the sepulchre, the acting out of the last moments of Our Lord by children of the parish, the lighting of the candles as the light fails. This is usually one of the most intense moments of the year for me, the moment at which they belong to me, my children, black-swathed and grave. But this year, will they be thinking of the Passion, of the solemnity of the Eucharist, or will their mouths be watering in anticipation? Her stories, flying bells and feasting, are pervasive, seductive. I try to infuse the sermon with our own seductions, but the dark glories of the church cannot compare with her magic carpet rides. I called on Armand Voisin this afternoon. It's her birthday and the house was in commotion. Of course, I knew there was to be a kind of party, but never suspected anything like this. Caro mentioned it to me once or twice. She is reluctant to go, but hopes to use it as an opportunity to make peace with her mother once and for all, though I suspect even she does not anticipate the scale of the event. Vianne Rocher was in the kitchen, having spent most of the day preparing food. Josephine Muscat volunteered the cafe's kitchen as a supplementary cooking area, for Armand's house is too small to cope with such lavish preparations, and when I arrived, a whole phalanx of helpers were bringing dishes, pans and tureens from the cafe to Armand's house. A rich, winey smell came from the open window, and in spite of myself, I found my mouth watering. Narcisse was working in the garden, fixing flowers onto a kind of trellis constructed between the house and the gate. The effect is startling. Clematis, morning glory, lilac and syringa seem to trail down the wooden structure, forming a thatch of colour above through which the sun filters gently. Armand was nowhere to be seen. I turned away, unsettled by this excessive display. Typical of her to have chosen Good Friday for this celebration. The lavishness of it all, flowers, food, crates of champagne delivered at the door and packed with ice to keep it cool, is almost blasphemous, a mocking cry in the face of the sacrificed God. I must speak to her about it tomorrow. I was about to leave when I caught sight of Guillaume Duplessis standing beside the wall, stroking one of Armand's cats. He raised his hat politely. "Helping, are you?" I demanded. Guillaume nodded. "I said I might give a hand," he admitted. "There's still a lot of work to do before tonight." "I'm amazed you want to have anything to do with this," I told him sharply. "Today of all days, too. Really, I think Armand's taking it too far this time. The expense, quite apart from the disrespect to the church." Guillaume shrugged. "She's entitled to her little celebration," he said mildly. "She's more likely to kill herself with overeating," I snapped tartly. "I think she's old enough to do what she likes," said Guillaume. I eyed him disapprovingly. He has changed since he began his association with the Rocher woman. The look of mournful humility has gone from his face, and there is something willful, almost defiant in its place. I don't like the way her family tries to run Armand's life for her, he continued stubbornly. I shrugged. I'm surprised that you, of all people, can take her side in this, I told him. Life's full of surprises, said Guillaume. I wish it were. Chapter 36. Friday, March 28th. Good Friday. At some point quite early on, I forgot what the party was all about and began to enjoy myself. While Anouk played in Les Maraudes, I orchestrated preparations for the largest and most lavish meal I had ever cooked, and became lost in succulent detail. I had 3 kitchens, my own large ovens at La Praline where I baked the cakes, the Café des Maraudes up the road for the shellfish, and Armand's tiny kitchen for the soup, vegetables, sauces and garnishes. Josephine offered to lend Armand the extra cutlery and plates she might need, but Armand shook her head, smiling. That's all dealt with, she replied. And so it was. Early on Thursday morning, a van arrived bearing the name of a large firm in Limoges and delivered 2 boxes of glass and silverware and 1 of fine china, all wrapped in shredded paper. The delivery man smiled as Armand signed the goods receipt. One of your granddaughters getting married, huh? He asked cheerily. Armand gave a bright chuckle. Could be, she replied. Could be. She spent Friday in high spirits, supposedly overseeing things, but mostly getting underfoot. Like a mischievous child, she had her fingers in saucers, peeped under dish covers and the lids of hot pans, until finally I begged Guillaume to take her to the hairdresser in Argonne for a couple of hours, if only to get her out of the way. When she returned, she was transformed. Hair smartly cropped and set under a rakish new hat, new gloves, new shoes. Shoes, gloves and hat were all the same shade of cherry red, Armand's favourite colour. I'm working upwards, she informed me with satisfaction as she settled into her rocker to watch the proceedings. By the end of the week, I might have the courage to buy a whole red dress. Imagine me walking into church with it on. Get some rest, I told her sternly. You've a party to go to tonight. I don't want you falling asleep in the middle of dessert. I won't, she said, but accepted to doze for an hour in the late sun while I dressed the table and the others went home to rest and change for the evening. The dinner table is large, absurdly so for Armand's little room, and with a little care would seat us all. A heavy piece of black oak, it took 4 people to manoeuvre it out into Narcisse's newly built arbour, where it stood beneath a canopy of foliage and flowers. The tablecloth is damask with a fine lace border and smells of the lavender in which she laid it after her marriage, a gift never yet used from her own grandmother. The plates from Limoges are white with a tiny border of yellow flowers running around the rim. Glasses, 3 different kinds, are crystal, nests of sunlight flicking rainbow flecks across the white cloth. A centerpiece of spring flowers from Narcisse, napkins folded neatly beside each plate. On each napkin, inscribed cards with the name of the guest. Armand Voisin, Vianne Rocher, Anouk Rocher, Caroline Clermont, Georges Clermont, Luc Clermont, Guillaume Duplessis, Josephine Bonnet, Julienne Narcisse, Michel Roux, Blanche Dumont, Cerisette Plançon. For a moment I did not recognize the last 2 names. Then I remembered Blanche and Zezette, still moored upriver and waiting. I realized that until now I had not known Roux's name, had assumed it to be a nickname, perhaps, for his red hair. The guests began to arrive at 8. I left my kitchen at 7 for a quick change and a shower, and when I returned, the boat was already moored under the house, and the river people were arriving. Blanche in her red dirndl and lace shirt, Zezette in an old black evening dress with her arms tattooed in henna and a ruby in her eyebrow. Rue in clean jeans and a white t-shirt, all of them bringing presents with them, wrapped in scraps of gift paper or wallpaper or pieces of cloth. Then came Narcisse in his Sunday suit, then Guillaume, a yellow flower in his buttonhole, then the Clermonts, resolutely cheery. Caro watching the river people with a wary eye, but nevertheless prepared to enjoy herself if such a sacrifice was demanded. Over aperitifs, salted pine nuts and tiny biscuits, we watched as Armande opened her presents. From Anouk, a picture of a cat in a red envelope. From Blanche, a jar of honey. Zezette, sachets of lavender embroidered with the letter B. I didn't have time to do one with your initial, she explained with cheery unconcern, but I promise I will next year. From Rue, a carved oak leaf, delicate as the real thing, with a cluster of acorns clinging to the stem. From Narcisse, a big basket of fruit and flowers. More lavish gifts came from the Clermonts. A scarf from Caro, not Hermès, I noticed, but silk nevertheless, and a silver flower vase. From Luc, something shiny and red in an envelope of crinkly paper, which he hides from his mother as best he can beneath a pile of discarded wrapping paper. Armande smirks and mouths at me behind her cupped hand. Josephine brings a small gold locket, smiles apologetically. It's not new, she says. Armande puts it around her neck, hugs Josephine roughly, paws Saint Raphael with a reckless hand. I can hear the conversation from the kitchen. Preparing so much food is a tricky business and much of my attention is given to it, but I catch some of what is going on. Caro is gracious, ready to be pleased. Josephine silent. Rue and Narcisse have found a common interest in exotic fruit trees. Zezette sings part of a folk song in her piping voice, her baby crooked casually into her arm. I notice that even the baby has been ceremonially daubed with henna, so that it looks like a plump little Guinante melon with its mottled golden skin and grey-green eyes. They move to the table. Armande, in high spirits, supplies much of the conversation. I hear Luc's low, pleasant accents talking about some book he has read. Caro's voice sharpens a little. I suspect Armande has poured herself another glass of Saint Raphael. Maman, you know you shouldn't, I hear her say, but Armande simply laughs. It's my party, she declares merrily. I won't have anyone being miserable at my party, least of all me. For the time being, nothing more is said on the subject. I hear Zezette flirting with Georges. Rue and Narcisse are discussing plums. Belle du Languedoc, declares the latter earnestly. That's the best for me. Small and sweet with a bloom on her like a butterfly's wing. But Rue is adamant. Mirabelle, he says firmly, the only yellow plum worth growing. Mirabelle. I turn back to my stove, and for a while I hear nothing more. It is a self-taught skill, born of obsession. No one taught me how to cook. My mother brewed spells and filters. I sublimated the whole into a sweeter alchemy. We were never much alike, she and I. She dreamed of floating, of astral encounters and secret essences. I pored over recipes and menus filched from restaurants where we could never afford to eat. Gently she jeered at my fleshly preoccupations. It's a good thing we don't have the money, she would say to me, otherwise you'd get fat as a pig. Poor mother. When cancer had eaten away the best of her, she was still vain enough to rejoice at the lost weight. And while she read her cards and muttered to herself, I would leaf through my collection of cookery cards, incanting the names of never-tasted dishes like mantras, like the secret formulas of eternal life. Bœuf en daube, champignons farcis à la grecque, escalope à la reine, crème caramel, chocolat en torte, tiramisu. In the secret kitchen of my imagination, I made them all, tested, tasted them. added to my collection of recipes wherever we went, pasted them into my scrapbook like photographs of old friends. They gave weight to my wanderings, the glossy clippings shining out from between the smeary pages like signposts along our erratic path. I bring them out now like long-lost friends. Soupe des tomates à la Gascon, served with fresh basil in a site of tartelette méridionale, made on biscuit-thin pâté brisé and lush with the flavours of olive oil and anchovy and rich local tomatoes, garnished with olives and roasted slowly to produce a concentration of flavours which seems almost impossible. I pour the 85 Chablis into tall glasses. Anouk drinks lemonade from hers with an air of exaggerated sophistication. Narcisse expresses interest in the tartlette's ingredients, praises the virtues of the misshapen Roussette tomato as opposed to the tasteless uniformity of the European money spinner. Roux lights the braziers at either side of the table and sprinkles them with citronella to keep away the insects. I catch Caro watching Armand with a look of disapproval. I eat little. Steeped in the sense of the cooking food for most of the day, I feel light-headed this evening, keyed up and unusually sensitive, so that when Josephine's hand brushes against my leg during the meal, I start and almost cry out. The Chablis is cool and tart, and I drink more of it than I should. Colours begin to seem brighter, sounds take on a cut-glass crispness. I hear Armand praising the cooking. I bring a herb salad to clear the palate, then foie gras on warm toast. I notice that Guillaume has brought his dog with him, surreptitiously feeding him with titbits under the crisp tablecloth. We pass from the political situation to the Basque separatists, to ladies' fashions via the best way to grow rocket and the superiority of wild over cultivated lettuce. The Chablis runs smooth throughout. Then the vol au vent, light as a puff of summer air, then elderflower sorbet, followed by plateau de fruits de mer with grilled langoustine, grey shrimps, prawns, oysters, bernique, spider crabs, and the bigger tourteau which can nip off a man's fingers as easily as I could nip a stem of rosemary. Winkles, palourdes, and atop it all, a giant black lobster, regal on its bed of seaweed. The huge platter gleams with reds and pinks and sea greens and pearly whites and purples. A mermaid's cachet of delicacies, which gives us a nostalgic salt smell, like childhood days at the seaside. We distribute crackers for the crab claws, tiny forks for the shellfish, dishes of lemon wedges and mayonnaise. Impossible to remain aloof with such a dish. It demands attention, informality. The glasses and silverware glitter in the lights of the lanterns hanging from the trellis above our heads. The night smells of flowers and the river. Armand's fingers are nimble as lace makers. The pile of discarded shells in front of her grows almost effortlessly. I bring more of the Chablis. Eyes brighten, faces made rosy with the effort of extracting the shellfish's elusive flesh. This is food which must be worked at, food which demands time. Josephine begins to relax a little, even to talk to Caro, struggling with a crab claw. Caro's hand slips, a jet of salt water from the crab hits her in the eye. Josephine laughs. After a moment, Caro joins in. I find myself talking too. The wine is pale and deceptive, its intoxication hidden beneath its smoothness. Caro is already slightly drunk, her face flushed, her hair coming down in tendrils. Georges squeezes my leg beneath the tablecloth, winks salaciously. Blanche talks of travelling. We have places in common, she and I. Nice, Vienna, Turin. Zezette's baby begins to wail. She dips a finger in Chablis for it to suck. Armand discusses de Musset with Luc, who stammers less the more he drinks. At last I remove the dismantled plateau, now reduced to pearly rubble on a dozen plates. Bowls of lemon water and mint salad for the fingers and palate. I clear the glasses, replace them with the coupe à champagne. Caro is looking alarmed again. As I move into the kitchen once more, I hear her talking to Armand in a low, urgent voice. Armand shushes her. Talk to me about it later. Tonight I want to celebrate. She greets the champagne with a squawk of satisfaction. The dessert is a chocolate fondue. Make it on a clear day. Cloudy weather dims the gloss on the melted chocolate, with 70% dark chocolate, butter, a little almond oil, double cream added at the very last minute and heated gently over a burner. Skewer pieces of cake or fruit and dip into the chocolate mixture. I have all their favourites here tonight, though only the Gâteau de Savoy is meant for dipping. Caro claims she cannot eat another thing, but takes 2 slices of the dark and white chocolate roulade bicolore. Armand samples everything, flushed now and growing more expansive by the minute. Josephine is explaining to Blanche why she left her husband. Georges smiles lecherously at me from behind chocolate-smeared fingers. Luc teases Anouk, who is half asleep in her chair. The dog bites playfully at the table leg. Zezette, quite unself-consciously, begins to breastfeed her baby. Caro appears to be on the verge of comment, but shrugs and says nothing. I open another bottle of champagne. You're sure you're okay? Says Luc quietly to Armand. I mean, you don't feel ill or anything. You've been taking your medicine. Armand laughs. You worry too much for a boy of your age, she tells him. You should be raising hell, making your mother anxious, not teaching your grandmother how to suck eggs. She is still good-humoured, but looks a little tired now. We've been at table almost 4 hours. It is 10 to midnight. I know, he says with a smile, but I'm in no hurry to inherit just yet. She pats his hand and pours him another glass. Her hand is not quite steady, and a little wine spills on the tablecloth. Not to worry, she says brightly. Plenty more left. We round off the meal with my own chocolate ice cream, truffles and coffee in tiny demi-tasses with a Calvados chaser, drunk from the hot cup like an explosion of flowers. Anouk demands her canal, a sugar lump moistened with a few drops of the liqueur, then wants another for Pantouf. Cups are drained, plates cleared. The braziers are burning low. I watch Armande, still talking and laughing, but less animated than before, her eyes half closed, holding Luc's hand under the table. What time is it? She asks some time later. Almost 1, says Guillaume. She sighs. Time for me to go to bed, she declares. Not as young as I was, you know. She fumbles to her feet, picking up an armful of presents from under her chair as she does so. I can see Guillaume watching her attentively. He knows. She throws him a smile of peculiar, quizzical sweetness. Don't think I'm going to make a speech, she says with comical brusqueness. Can't bear speeches. Just wanted to thank you all of you, and to say what a good time I had. Can't remember a better. Don't think there's ever been a better. People always think the fun has to stop when you get old. Well, it doesn't. Cheers from Rue, Georges and Zezette. Armand nods wisely. Don't call on me too early tomorrow, though, she advises with a little grimace. I don't think I've drunk so much since I was 20, and I need my sleep. She gives me a quick glance, almost a warning. Need my sleep, she replies vaguely, beginning to make her way from the table. Caro stood up to steady her, but she waved her away with a peremptory gesture. Don't fuss, girl, she said. That was always your way, always fussing. She gave me one of her bright looks. Vianne can help me, she declared. The rest can wait till morning. I took her to her room while the guests left slowly, still laughing and talking. Carol was holding onto Georges' arm. Yuke supported her from the other side. Her hair had come entirely undone now, making her look young and softer featured. As I opened the door of Armand's room, I heard her say, "Virtually promised she'd go to Les Mimosas. What a weight off my mind." Armand heard it too and gave a sleepy chuckle. "Can't be easy having a delinquent mother," she said. "Put me to bed, Vianne, before I drop." I helped her undress. There was a linen nightdress laid out in readiness by the pillow. I folded her clothes while she pulled it over her head. "Presents," said Armand. "Put them there where I can see them." A vague gesture in the direction of the dresser. That's good." I carried out her instructions in a kind of daze. Perhaps I too had drunk more than I intended, for I felt quite calm. I knew from the number of insulin ampoules in the fridge that she had stopped taking it a couple of days ago. I wanted to ask her if she was sure, if she really knew what she was doing. Instead, I draped Yuke's present, a silk slip of lavish, brazen, indisputable redness, on the chair back for her to see. She chuckled again, stretched out her hand to touch the fabric. "You can go now, Vianne." Her voice was gentle but firm. It was lovely. I hesitated. For a second, I caught a glimpse of us both in the dressing table mirror. With her newly cut hair, she looked like the old man of my vision, but her hands were a splash of crimson, and she was smiling. She had closed her eyes. "Leave the light on, Vianne." It was a final dismissal. "Good night." I kissed her gently on the cheek. She smelt of lavender and chocolate. I went into the kitchen to finish the washing up. Rue had stayed behind to help me. The other guests had gone. Anouk was asleep on the sofa, a thumb corked into her mouth. We washed up in silence, and I put the new plates and glasses into Armand's cupboards. Once or twice, Rue tried to begin a conversation, but I could not talk to him. Only the small, percussive sounds of china and glass punctuated our silence. "Are you all right?" he said at last. His hand was gentle on my shoulder. His hair was marigolds. I said the first thing which came into my head. I was thinking about my mother. Strangely enough, I realized it was true. She would have loved this. She loved fireworks. He looked at me. His strange skyline eyes had darkened almost to purple in the dim yellow kitchen lighting. I wished I could tell him about Armand. "I didn't know you were called Michel," I said at last. He shrugged. "Names don't matter." "You're losing your accent," I realized in surprise. "You used to have such a strong Marseille accent, but now..." He gave me his rare, sweet smile. "Accents don't matter either." His hands cupped my face. Soft for a labourer's, pale and soft as a woman's. I wondered if anything he had told me was true. For the time, it didn't seem to matter. I kissed him. He tasted of chocolate. I thought of Armand. I always thought he cared for Josephine. Even as I kissed him, I knew it, but this was the only magic we had between us to combat the night. The simplest magic, the wildfire we bring down the mountainside at Beltane, this year a little early. Small comforts in defiance of the dark. His hands sought my breasts under my jumper. For a second, I hesitated. There have already been too many men along the road, men like this one, good men about whom I cared but did not love. If I was right, and he and Josephine belonged together, what might this do to them? To me? His mouth was light, his touch simple. From the flowers outside, I caught a wafting of lilac brought in by the warm air from the braziers. Outside, I told him softly. In the garden. He glanced at Anouk, still sleeping on the sofa, and nodded. Together we padded outside under the starry purple sky. The garden was still warm in the glow of the braziers. The syringas and lilacs of Narcissus trellis blanketed us beneath their scent. We lay on the grass like children. We made no promises, spoke no words of love, though he was gentle, almost passionless, moving instead with a slow sweetness along my body, lapping my skin with fluttering movements of the tongue. Above his head, the sky was purple-black like his eyes, and I could see the broad band of the Milky Way like a road around the world. I knew that this could be the only time between us, and felt only a dim melancholy at the thought. Instead, a growing sense of presence, of completion filled me, overriding my loneliness, even my sorrow for Armand. There would be time for grieving later. For the moment, simple wonder, at myself lying naked in the grass, at the silent man beside me, at the immensity above and the immensity within. We lay for a long time, Rue and I, until our sweat cooled and little insects ran across our bodies, and we smelt lavender and thyme from the flower bed at our feet as, holding hands, we watched the unbearable slow wheeling of the sky. Under his breath, I could hear Rue singing a little song. V'là le bon vent, v'là le joli vent, v'là le bon vent, mamie m'appelle. The wind was inside me now, tugging at me with its relentless imperative. At the very center, a small, still space, miraculously untroubled, and the almost familiar sense of something new. This too is a kind of magic, one that my mother never understood, and yet I am more certain of this new, miraculous, living warmth inside me than of anything I have done before. At last I understand why I drew the lovers that night. Holding the knowledge close, I closed my eyes and tried to dream of her, as I did in those months before Anouk was born, of a little stranger with bright cheeks and snapping black eyes. When I awoke, Rue was gone, and the wind had changed again. Chapter 37. Saturday, March 29th, Easter Eve. Help me, Père. Haven't I prayed enough? Suffered enough for our sins? My penance has been exemplary. My head swims from lack of food and sleep. Is this not the time of redemption, when all sins are washed away? The silver is back on the altar, the candles lit in anticipation. Flowers, for the first time since the beginning of Lent, adorn the chapel. Even mad St. Francis is crowned with lilies, and their scent is like clean flesh. We have waited so long, you and I, since your first stroke. Even then you would not speak to me, though you spoke to others. Then, last year, the second stroke. They tell me you are unreachable, but I know this to be pretense, a waiting game. You will awake in your own time. They found Armand Voisin this morning, stiff and still smiling in her bed, pale. Another one who has evaded us. I gave her the last rites, though she would not have thanked me even if she had heard. Perhaps I am the only one who still derives comfort from such things. She meant to die last night, arranged everything to the minutest detail, food, drink, company. Her family around her, deceived by her promises of reform. Her damnable arrogance. She will pay, promises Carol, 20 masses, 30 masses. Pray for her, pray for us. I find I am still trembling with rage. I cannot answer her with moderation. The funeral is on Tuesday. I imagine her now, lying in state in the hospital mortuary, peonies at her head and with that smile still fixed on her white lips, and the thought fills me not with pity or even satisfaction, but a terrible, impotent fury. Of course, we know who is behind this. The Rocher woman. Oh, Carol told me about that. She is the influence, Père, the parasite which has invaded our garden. I should have listened to my instincts, uprooted her the moment I set eyes on her. She who has balked me at every turn, laughing at me behind her shielded window, sending out corrupting suckers in every direction. I was a fool, Père. Our Mon Voisin was killed because of my folly. Evil lives with us. Evil wears a winning smile and bright colours. When I was a child, I used to listen in terror to the story of the gingerbread house, of the witch who tempted little children in and ate them. I look at her shop, all wrapped in shining papers like a present waiting to be unwrapped, and I wonder how many people, how many souls she has already tempted beyond redemption. Armand Voisin, Joséphine Muscat, Paul-Marie Muscat, Julien Narcisse, Luc Clermont. She has to be routed. Her brat too. In any way we can manage. Too late for niceties, Père. My soul is already compromised. I wish I was 16 again. I try to recall the savagery of 16, the inventiveness of the boy I once was. The boy who flung the bottle and who put the matter behind him. But those days are over. I must be clever. I must not discredit my office. And yet, if I fail, what would Muscat do? Oh, he is brutal, contemptible in his way. And yet he saw the danger long before I did. What would he do? I must take Muscat as my model, Muscat the pig, brutal but cunning as a pig. What would he do? The chocolate festival is tomorrow. On this depends her success or failure. Too late to turn the tide of public opinion against her. I must be seen to be blameless. Behind the secret window, thousands of chocolates wait to be sold. Eggs, animals, Easter nests wrapped in ribbon, gift boxes, baby rabbits in bright ruffles of cellophane. Tomorrow, 100 children will awaken to the sound of Easter bells, and their first thought will not be, "He is risen," but chocolates. Easter chocolates. But what if there were no chocolates? The thought is paralyzing. For a second, hot joy suffuses me. The clever pig within me grins and prances. I could break into her house, it tells me. The back door is old and half rotten. I could lever it open, sneak into the shop with a cudgel. Chocolate is brittle, easily damaged. 5 minutes among her gift boxes would do it. She sleeps on the top floor. She might not hear. Besides, I would be quick. I could wear a mask too, so that if she saw, everyone would suspect Muscat, a revenge attack. The man is not here to deny it, and besides... Père, did you move? I was certain for a moment that your hand twitched, the first 2 fingers crooked as if in benediction. Again, that spasm, like a gunfighter dreaming past battles. A sign. Praise the Lord. A sign. Chapter 38. Sunday, March 30th. Easter Sunday, 4 a.m. I barely slept last night. Her window was lit until 2, and even then I dared not move in case she was lying awake in the darkness. In the armchair, I dozed for a couple of hours, setting the alarm in case I overslept. I need not have worried. My sleep, such as it was shot through with pinpricks of dreams so fleeting that I barely remembered them even as they stung me awake. I think I saw Armande, a young Armande, though obviously I never knew her there, running through the fields at the back of Les Maraudes in a red dress, black hair flying. Or maybe it was Vianne, and I had somehow confused them. Then I dreamed of the fire at Les Maraudes, of the slattern and her man, of the harsh red banks of the Tarn, and of you, Père, and my mother in the chancery. All that summer's bitter vintage seeped through my dreams, and I, like a pig snouting for truffles, turning over more and more of the rotten delicacies and gorging. At 4, I rise from the chair. I have slept in my clothes, discarding my soutane and collar. The church has nothing to do with this business. I make coffee, very strong but with no sugar, though technically my penance is over. I say, technically. In my heart, I know that Easter has not yet come. He is not yet risen. If I succeed today, then he will rise. I find that I am trembling. I eat dry bread to give myself courage. The coffee is hot and bitter. When I have accomplished my task, I promise myself a good meal. Eggs, ham, sugar rolls from Poitou's. And my mouth fills at the thought. I put on the radio to a station which plays classical music. Sheep may safely graze. My mouth twists in a hard, dry grin of contempt. This is no time for pastorals. This is the hour of the pig, the cunning pig. Off with the music. The time is 5 to 5. Looking out of the window, I can see the very first crack of light on the horizon. I have plenty of time. The curate will be here at 6 to ring the Easter carillon. I have more than enough time for my secret business. I put on the balaclava, which I have laid aside for my purpose. In the mirror, I look different, alarming, a saboteur. That makes me smile again. My mouth under the mask looks tough and cynical. I almost hope she sees me. 5:10 a.m. The door is unlocked. I can hardly believe my luck. It shows her confidence, her insolent belief that no one can withstand her. I discard the thick screwdriver with which I would have jimmied the door and take up the heavy piece of wood, part of a lintel pair that fell during the war, in both hands. The door opens into silence. Another of her red sachets swings above the doorway. I pull it down and drop it contemptuously onto the floor. For a time, I am disorientated. The place has changed since it was a bakery, and in any case, I am less familiar with the back part of the shop. Only a very faint reflection of light gleams from the tiled surfaces, and I am glad I thought to bring a torch. I switch it on now, and for a moment I am almost blinded by the whiteness of the enamelled surfaces, the tops, the sinks, the old ovens all shining with a moony glow in the torch's narrow beam. There are no chocolates to be seen. Of course, this is only the preparation area. I am not sure why I'm surprised that the place is so clean. I imagined her a slattern, leaving pans unwashed and plates stacked in the sink, long black hairs in the cake mixture. Instead, she is scrupulously tidy. Rows of pans arranged on the shelves in order of size, copper with copper, enamel with enamel, porcelain bowls to hand and utensils, spoons, skillets hanging from the whitewashed walls. On the scarred old table, several stone bread pans are standing. In the centre, a vase with shaggy yellow dahlias casts a shock of shadows before them. For some reason, the flowers enrage me. What right has she to flowers when Armand Voisin lies dead? The pig inside me tips the flowers onto the table, grinning. I let him have his way. I need his ferocity for the task in hand. 5:20 a.m. The chocolates must be in the shop themselves. Quietly, I make my way through the kitchen and open the thick pine door into the front section of the building. To my left, stairs lead up into the living area. To my right, the counter, the shelves, the displays, the boxes. The smell of chocolate, though expected, is startling. The darkness seems to have intensified it, so that for an instant the smell is the darkness, folding around me like a rich brown powder, stifling thought. The beam of my torch picks out clusters of brightness, metallic paper, ribbons, sparkling puffs of cellophane. The cave of treasures is all around me. A thrill runs through my body. To be here in the witch's house, unseen, an intruder. To touch her things in secret as she sleeps. I feel a compulsion to see the display window, to tear down the screen of paper and to be the first. Absurd, as I intend to wreck the whole thing. But the compulsion will not be denied. I pad softly in my rubber shoes, the heavy block of wood held loosely in my hand. I have plenty of time. Time enough to indulge my curiosity if I want to. Besides, this moment is too precious to be squandered. I want to savor it. 5:30 a.m. Very gently, I pull aside the film of paper which covers the window. It comes away with a small ripping sound, and I lay it aside, straining to hear any signs of activity from the floor above. There are none. My torchlight illuminates the display, and for a moment I almost forget why I am here. It is an amazement of riches, glacé fruits and marzipan flowers and mountains of loose chocolates of all shapes and colours. And rabbits, ducks, hens, chicks, lambs, gazing out at me with merry grave chocolate eyes like the terracotta armies of ancient China. And above it all, a statue of a woman, graceful brown arms holding a sheaf of chocolate wheat, hair rippling. The detail is beautifully rendered. The hair added in a darker grade of chocolate, the eyes brushed on in white. The smell of chocolate is overwhelming, the rich, fleshy scent of it which drags down the throat in an exquisite trail of sweetness. The wheat sheaf woman smiles very slightly, as if contemplating mysteries. Try me, test me, taste me. Its song is louder than ever, here in the very nest of temptation. I could reach out a hand in any direction and pick up one of these forbidden fruits, taste its secret flesh. The thought pierces me in 1,000 places. Try me, test me, taste me. No one would be any the wiser. Try me, test me, taste. Why not? 5:40 a.m. I will take the first thing which falls beneath my fingers. I must not lose myself in this distraction. A single chocolate, not theft precisely, but salvage. Alone of all its brethren, it will survive the wreck. My hand lingers in spite of itself, a hovering dragonfly above a cluster of dainties. A plexiglass tray with a lid protects them. The name of each piece is lettered on the lid in fine, cursive script. The names are entrancing. Bitter orange cracknel, apricot marzipan roll, cerisette russe, white rum truffle, Manon Blanc, nipples of Venus. I feel myself flushing beneath the mask. How could anyone order something with a name like that? And yet they look wonderful, plumply white in the light of my torch, tipped with darker chocolate. I take one from the top of the tray. I hold it beneath my nose. It smells of cream and vanilla. No one will know. I realize that I have not eaten chocolate since I was a boy, more years ago than I can remember, and even then it was a cheap grade of chocolat croquet, 15% cocoa solids, 20 for the dark, with a sticky aftertaste of fat and sugar. Once or twice I bought sushar from the supermarket, but at 5 times the price of the other, it was a luxury I could seldom afford. This is different altogether. The brief resistance of the chocolate shell as it meets the lips, the soft truffle inside. There are layers of flavor like the bouquet of a fine wine, a slight bitterness, a richness like ground coffee. Warmth brings the flavor to life and it fills my nostrils, a taste succubus which has me moaning. 5:45 a.m. I try another after that, telling myself it will not matter. Again, I linger over the names. Crème de cassis, 3-nut cluster. I select a dark nugget from a tray marked Eastern Journey. Caramelized ginger in a hard sugar shell, releasing a mouthful of liqueur like a concentration of spices. A breath of aromatic air where sandalwood and cinnamon and lime vie for attention with cedar and allspice. I take another from a tray marked Pêche au millefeuille. A slice of peach steeped in honey and eau de vie, a crystallized peach sliver on the chocolate lid. I look at my watch. There is still time. I know I should begin my righteous work in earnest. The display in the shop, though bewildering, is not enough to account for the hundreds of orders she has received. There must be another place where she keeps her gift boxes, her stores, the bulk of her business. The things here are just for show. I grab an almondine and stuff it into my mouth to aid thought. Then a caramel fondant. Then a Manon Blanc, fluffy with fresh cream and almond. So little time when so many morsels remain to be tasted. I could do my work in 5 minutes, maybe less, as long as I know where to look. I'll take one more chocolate, for luck, before I go searching. Just one more. 5:55 a.m. It is like one of my dreams. I roll in chocolates. I imagine myself in a field of chocolates, on a beach of chocolates, basking, rooting, gorging. I have no time to read the labels. I cram chocolates into my mouth at random. The pig loses his cleverness in the face of so much delight, becomes a pig again. And though something at the top of my mind screams at me to stop, I cannot help myself. Once begun, it cannot end. This has nothing to do with hunger. I force them down, mouth bulging, hands full. For a terrible instant, I imagine Armande returning to haunt me, to curse me perhaps with her own peculiar affliction, the curse of death by gluttony. I can hear myself making sounds as I eat, moaning, keening sounds of ecstasy and despair, as if the pig within has finally found a voice. 6 a.m. He has risen. The sound of the bells jangles me out of my enchantment. I find myself sitting on the floor, spilled chocolates around me as if I have indeed, as I imagined, rolled in them. The cudgel lies forgotten at my side. I have removed the restrictive mask. The window, cleared of its wrapping, gapes blankly with the first pale rays of morning. He has risen. Drunkenly, I stagger to my feet. In 5 minutes, the early worshippers will begin to arrive for Mass. Already I must have been missed. I grab at my cudgel with fingers slimed with melted chocolate. Suddenly, I know where she keeps her stock. The old cellar, cool and dry, where flour sacks were once kept. I can get there. I know I can. He is risen. I turn, holding my cudgel, desperate for time. Time. She is waiting for me, watching from behind the bead curtain. I have no way of knowing how long she has watched me. A tiny smile curves her lips. Very gently, she takes the cudgel from my hand. Between her fingers, she is holding something which looks like a charred piece of coloured paper. A card, perhaps. And that was how they saw me, Père, crouching in the ruins of her window, face smeared with chocolate, eyes haggard. From nowhere, people seemed to come running to her aid. Duplessis with his dog lead in one hand, standing guard at the door. The Rocher woman at the back door with my cudgel crooked in her elbow. Poitou from across the road, up early for his baking, calling the curious in to see. The Clermont like landed carp, staring, Narcisse shaking his fist. And the laughter. God, the laughter. And all the time the bells are ringing, he is risen across Saint-Jérôme Square. He is risen. Chapter 39. Monday, March 31st. Easter Monday. I sent Renaud on his way when the bells stopped ringing. He never said Mass. Instead, he ran off into Les Maraudes without a word. Few people missed him. Instead, we began the festival early, with hot chocolate and cakes outside La Praline while I quickly cleared up the mess. Fortunately, this was little. A few hundred chocolates spilled onto the floor, but none of our gift boxes damaged. A couple of adjustments to the display window, and it looked as good as ever. The festival was all we hoped for. Craft stalls, fanfares, Narcisse's band. Surprisingly, he plays the saxophone with rakish virtuosity. Jugglers, fire eaters. The river people are back, for the day at least, and the streets were alive with their variegated figures. Some set up stalls of their own, hair beading and selling jam and honey, tattooing in henna or telling fortunes. Roux sold dolls he had carved from pieces of driftwood. Only the Clermonts were missing, though I kept seeing Armande in my mind's eye, as if on such an occasion I could not imagine her being absent. A woman in a red scarf, the round curve of a bent back in a grey pinafore, a straw hat gaily decorated with cherries, bobbing above the holiday crowd. She seemed to be everywhere. Strangely enough, I found that I felt no grief, merely a growing conviction that at any moment she might appear, lifting the lids of boxes to see what was inside, licking her fingers greedily or whooping with glee at the noise, the fun, the gaiety of it all. Once I was even sure I heard her voice, just beside me as I leaned forward to reach a packet of chocolate raisins, though when I looked there was only space. My mother would have understood. I delivered all my orders and sold the last gift box at 4:15. The Easter egg hunt was won by Lucie Proudhon, but all the entrants had cornet surprise with chocolates and toy trumpets and tambourines and streamers. A single char with real flowers advertised Narcisse's nursery. Some of the younger people dared to start a dance under the severe gaze of Saint-Jérôme, and the sun shone all day. And yet, as I sit now with Anouk in our quiet house, a book of fairy tales in one hand, I feel uneasy. I tell myself that it is the anticlimax that inevitably follows a long-awaited event. Fatigue, perhaps, anxiety, Renaud's intrusion at the last moment, the heat of the sun, the people. Grief, too, for Armande, emerging now as the sound of merriment abates. Sorrow coloured with so many other conflicting things. Loneliness, loss, disbelief, and a kind of calm feeling of rightness. My dear Armande, you would have loved this so much. But you had your own fireworks, didn't you? Guillaume called late this evening, long after we had cleared away all signs of the festival. Anouk was getting ready for bed, her eyes still filled with carnival lights. "Can I come in?" His dog has learned to sit at his command and waits solemnly by the door. He is carrying something in one hand, a letter. "Armand said I was to give this to you. You know, after." I take the letter. Inside the envelope, something small and hard rattles against the paper. "Thank you. I'll not stay." He looks at me for a moment, then puts out his hand, a stilted yet oddly touching gesture. His handshake is firm and cool. I feel stinging in my eyes. Something bright falls onto the old man's sleeve. His or mine, I am not certain which. "Good night, Bien." "Good night, Guillaume." The envelope contains a single sheet of paper. I pull it out and something rolls with it onto the table. Coins, I think. The writing is large and effortful. "Dear Vianne, thank you for everything. I know how you must feel. Talk to Guillaume if you like. He understands better than anyone else. I'm sorry I couldn't be at your festival, but I've seen it so often in my mind that it doesn't really matter. Kiss Anouk for me and give her one of the enclosed. The other is for the next one. I think you'll know what I mean. I'm tired now, and I can smell a change coming in the wind. I think sleep will do me good. And who knows, maybe we'll meet again someday. Yours, Armand Voisin. P.S. Don't bother going to the funeral, either of you. It's Caro's party, and I suppose she's entitled to it if that's the kind of thing she likes. Instead, invite all our friends around to La Praline for a pot of chocolate. I love you all. A. When I had finished, I put down the sheet and look for the rolling coins. I find one on the table and the other on a chair, 2 gold sovereigns gleaming red bright in my hand. One for Anouk, and the other? Instinctively, I reach for the warm, still place inside myself, the secret place I have not yet fully revealed even to myself. Anouk's head rests gently on my shoulder. Almost asleep, she croons to Pantouf as I read aloud. We have heard little of Pantouf these past few weeks, usurped by more tangible playmates. It seems significant that he should return now the wind has changed. Something in me feels the inevitability of the change. My carefully built fantasy of permanence is like the sandcastles we used to build on the beach, waiting for a high tide. Even without the sea, the sun erodes them. By tomorrow, they are almost gone. Even so, I can feel a little anger, a little hurt. But the scent of the carnival draws me nevertheless. The moving wind, the hot wind from, where was it? The south, the east, America, England? It is only a matter of time. Lansquenet, with all its associations, seems less real to me somehow, already receding into memory. The machinery winds down. The mechanism is silent. Perhaps it is what I suspected from the first, that Renaud and I are linked, that one balances the other, and that without him I have no purpose here. Whatever it is, the neediness of the town is gone. I can feel satisfaction in its place, a full-bellied satiety with no room for more. In homes everywhere in Lansquenet, couples are making love, children are playing, dogs barking, televisions blaring. Without us. Guillaume strokes his dog and watches Casablanca. Alone in his room, Luc reads Rimbaud aloud without a hint of a stammer. Rue and Josephine, alone in their newly painted home, discover each other from the inside out, little by little. Radio Gascoigne ran an item on the chocolate festival this evening, proudly announcing the Festival of Lansquenet-sous-Tarn, a charming local tradition. No longer will tourists drive through Lansquenet on their way to other places. I have put the invisible town on the map. The wind smells of the sea, of ozone and frying, of the seafront at Juan Lepin, of pancakes and coconut oil and charcoal and sweat. So many places waiting for the wind to change, so many needy people. How long this time? 6 months? A year? Anouk nestles her face into my shoulder and I hold her close, too hard, for she half wakes and murmurs something accusing. La Céleste Praline will be a bakery once more, or perhaps a confiserie-pâtisserie, with guimauve hanging from the ceiling like strings of pastel sausages and boxes of pain d'épices with Souvenir de Lansquenet-sous-Tarn stenciled across the lid. At least we have money, more than enough to start again somewhere else. Nice, perhaps, or Cannes, London, or Paris. Anouk mutters in her sleep. She feels it too. And yet, we have progressed. Not for us the anonymity of hotel rooms, the flicker of neon, the move from north to south at the turn of a card. At last we have faced down the black man, Anouk and I, seen him at last for what he is, a fool to himself, a carnival mask. We cannot stay here forever, but perhaps he has paved the way for us to stay elsewhere. Some seaside town, perhaps, or a village by a river with maize fields and vineyards. Our names will change. The name of our shop, too, will alter. La Truffe Enchantée, perhaps, or Tentation de Vigne in memory of Renaud. And this time, we can take so much of Lansquenet with us. I hold Armand's gift in the palm of my hand. The coins are heavy, solid to the touch. The gold is reddish, almost the colour of Rue's hair. Again, I wonder how she knew, exactly how far she could see. Another child, not fatherless this time, but a good man's child, even if he never knows it. I wonder if she will have his hair, his smoky eyes. I am already certain she will be a girl. I even know her name. Other things we can leave behind. The black man is gone. My voice sounds different to me now, bolder, stronger. There is a note in it which, if I listen carefully, I can almost recognize. A note of defiance, even of glee. My fears are gone. You too are gone, Maman, though I will always hear you speaking to me. I need no longer be afraid of my face in the mirror. Anouk smiles in her sleep. I could stay here, Maman. We have a home, friends. The weather vane outside my window turns, turns. Imagine hearing it every week, every year, every season. Imagine looking out of my window on a winter's morning. The new voice inside me laughs, and the sound is almost like coming home. The new life inside me turns softly, sweetly. Anouk talks in her sleep, nonsense syllables. Her small hands clench against my arm. Please. Her voice is muffled by my jumper. Maman, sing me a song. She opens her eyes. The earth, seen from a great height, is the same blue-green shade. Okay. She closes her eyes again, and I begin to sing softly. V'là le bon vent, v'là le joli vent, v'là le bon vent, mamie m'appelle. Hoping that this time it will remain a lullaby, that this time the wind will not hear, that this time, please, just this once, it will leave without us. The end.
Yay!
Wow.
Wow.
Congratulations.
So beautiful.
That was amazing. Wow. 2 weeks ago, I wasn't expecting to have a whole story read to me.
Yeah, no way.
I don't think I've actually had a whole story read to me, in fact. I think I've had chapters and things, but not a whole single story by one person. So put this down to a first.
Definitely not since I was a child.
Okay, there we go. That's caveat as an adult.
Does anyone notice that the dates were very, very similar to around right now?
Yeah.
Like it's
Yes,
the 29th
I was
of March.
thinking that.
And it's like,
Yes.
So, strangely enough, when I read this in about 20 hours inside... Hello! So I effectively read this in one day, kind of whilst in a police cell, but we'll gloss over that part. It was also this time of year. It was almost exactly a year ago, and it had a very, very sort of... It was literally Easter that same weekend. You know, it kind of had a really tumultuous internal feeling about it because it was literally the same time.
Yeah. Weird.
It was a really wonderful, wonderful choice. Not just because the language is so beautifully read by you, Frankie, but I think also the kind of just taking pleasure in the simple things and the kind of indulgence is so appropriate to this moment for us.
Yeah.
So charming.
Really agree.
Can I just say as well, important, can everyone clap Zach for recording all of these and for coming every single time and just...
It's definitely not on the screen currently.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach. Love you both.
Is Zach not here?
Zach's gone. Zach's long gone.
Is he asleep or something?
After recording.
I'm on gallery.
Saturday night. He could be at Motley Hue, because they've got Bristol DJs doing Motley Hue, and then live music, so could be that.
he may have gone to the
Zach,
bathroom.
if you've abandoned us, I take it all back.
Officially, he's still here. Like, if you look in the list, he's still here.
I mean, his camera's still on. He's just not there.
Is Zach the one who's recording this?
Into a guitar.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is.
Does that mean he's going to carry on recording until it's just him left and he's recording just him? I really like that idea. It's like, good night, everyone. Good night. Good night. And then it's just like this blank screen for
Just
tens
nothing.
of minutes.
No, we can't ever record after Frankie. That's a sacred space. Only for the people who stay to the end.
Yeah,
but we don't talk
we
about
don't want Frankie knowing what we talk about afterwards.
That's always how gorgeous Frankie is.
Also, we've put Robert to bed again, which is
If people really like the way that Joanne writes, what she's doing at the minute is touring around with what's called the Joanne Harris Storytime Band, and she writes short stories and reads them, and then her and the band sing songs which are to do with the stories. Look them up; they're really good.
Why is she your family friend, Nick?
Yeah, I love that you were just like,
She's
oh,
from Barnsley, and just...
Oh my god, do all Barnsley people know each other?
Not all of them. Related. She happened to go to school with people of my parents' generation, and yeah, she ended up being a friend of ours. So.
Is she charming?
Sorry?
Cheers, Charlotte.
She is. Is she
Sorry, I can only do one screen at a time, so I'm like...
you. Frankie taught me how. You got to swipe.
swipe.
I'm on a laptop, but I don't know how to swipe on the laptop.
On the laptop, go up to the top right, and then you'll get the option to put us all on gallery view, and then you get to see everyone at once.
I've had this.
That sounds really tempting to go to a laptop to get that.
Excessively to do
Do it.
this, and I have still not succeeded.
It's
I
just
try every night. It fails. What are you seeing? When it
A little grid, a little like 3x3 grid of squares that switches you from speaker view to gallery view.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
You have to hover in the top right
Yeah.
for it to appear.
Yeah, it doesn't appear
Yay, Zach's back.
mice in that direction. You have to put the mice.
Zach, you missed applause for you.
Is that bad?
Were you
Hi.
on the internet?
Oh, he's back. Welcome back, Zach.
Are you
Hi.
running between parties like Madame Doubtfire?
Shall we do it again?
But much easier because you're
Yeah. Are you seeing other story times behind our back?
No, I just needed to pee for like the last half an hour.
That was a really
So it was like the end.
Oh,
Winning time.
did everyone enjoy their treats? How was everybody's?
Oh my god, so good.
Very delicious.
So good. So delicious.
I had soup.
Undercooked, so I had to put the others back in the oven.
Yeah. Did anyone else feel like they had a socially sanctioned treat time because Frankie said we should? So I had ice cream and melted chocolate, which I don't really have both. And thanks, Frankie.
Maybe this is an excuse to have something sweet every single night.
Oh, I'm gonna go and get mine. Nobody go away. I'm gonna go and get my thing.
Alright,
Hold your poses.
You look fucking glamorous.
Thank you.
What's that about?
So cute.
Look how hot you look.
Wait, I'm gonna click on you, Neville, just to see you for a second.
Oh.
Oh,
pretty.
Has everyone seen Andrea's dress and shoes as well?
No.
Has everyone seen Andrea's dress and shoes?
no. Okay.
No, but we should now.
Very fancy.
Okay. If you insist. Right. Let's do this. Just a second.
I've got a question about the end. So
Wait, we're watching.
Wait 1 second, Jonas.
We're checking out the awesome dress and shoes.
Yeah, let Andrea speak for a second.
Oh, so nice.
You have to talk, Andrea.
Also, your place is lovely.
Yeah. An overall good image.
Oh, for dancing on.
Excellent outfit.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I also am wearing a brand new dress.
Oh,
From a shop. It's green animal print. Nice. I don't think I look as glamorous as Andrea, but it's pretty nice.
They looked very glamorous.
Charlotte, did you say from a shop?
Yeah.
What's going on? It changed.
My
Was
friend
it Tesco's?
given it to me.
Oh,
Thing for me.
oh, it looks lovely.
She normally picks her dresses off of trees, so this is very different.
Can I just say, look at this.
Confidence boost number 4.
Can't look.
I want to put my face in it. Frankie, can you make some more
Can we
noises?
just get to watch?
Can I what?
Can we just watch Frankie eat? I want to hear noise.
No pressure.
Okay. I'll do one spoonful and then you've got to talk amongst yourselves.
Oh.
Yes, there.